All right, well then I guess we can go ahead and start this meeting. This is the earliest start we've probably had because I finally got here early enough to get my equipment set up right before it was scheduled to start. And Marion just showed up, which is just the very beginning of the meeting. We haven't officially begun, so you're just fine. Welcome to the February 21st edition of the Medfield Board of Selectmen meeting. The meeting will be held in a hybrid format. The Board of Selectmen will attend in person, and members of the public may attend in person. And we, once again, have several members of the public who are here doing just that. In addition, members of the public who wish to participate via Zoom may do so by basically going to the town website, pulling up the Board of Selectmen meeting agenda. Once you've done that, there is a Zoom link there that you can click on to come in by Zoom. So that's how you do it. Let's see. We are going to be recording this meeting. Medfield TV is streaming it, I believe, live, and it'll be available as a stored video. For the people that are here in the room with us tonight, if you're speaking on any particular issues and you're the primary speaker, we're going to ask you to use the main podium here because the feedback we've gotten from people who basically tune in for these meetings is that the audio feed works better through the microphone on the main podium. However, if you only have a short comment or you're not the main speaker or something and you don't really want to leave your chair, we'd ask you to grab the microphone, which is ordinarily seen very close to Bill Massaro, and there he is. When you speak into that microphone, you won't hear your voice amplified because that's not for amplifying your voice here in the room. That's for picking up the audio feed that goes out on Medfield TV. So you'll be feeling like you're holding a microphone that's not doing anything, but it is. So with that, and if you do speak, we'd ask you to identify yourself and give us your address so people know who's talking. Okay, to start with, we'd like to take a moment of appreciation for our troops serving around the globe in defense of our country. Thank you. The first item that we have here is a public hearing regarding a transfer of a retail liquor license on Bullard's Market. Come on up and talk to us. And I'm going to hereby declare this public hearing is now open.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Paul Noonan. I've been working at Bullard's Market for 37 years now. This is my second time here asking about this license transfer. I'm basically looking to become the manager of the liquor license with Andy Goldberg passing away last year. There was a bit of a hiccup with the ABCC. They found some lack in the paperwork between Alan, Andy's father, and down to him. So for it to come down to me, they had to go through certain hoops to get there. But I've been told that we are ready to attempt again. So I'm here asking to be permitted to be the manager of the liquor license.
So this is basically a duplicate request of the request we've already approved. It's just that
Correct.
that one didn't take.
Exactly.
Okay.
Sounds like Murphy's Law. There we go. All right, we're good.
I hope it doesn't go wrong from there.
I certainly support it. Yeah.
Pete, any comments or questions? No. I don't have any. Does anyone out in the public have any comments? Now that you've had several months to think this over a little longer. Okay, then I guess I will entertain a motion. Hereby close the public hearing. Then I'll entertain a motion.
Man, you're getting good at this stuff.
Well, I've been having some practice. I'm trying to. This was
Just as you get ready to leave in a few weeks, it's like,
Yeah.
I would move that we transfer the retail liquor license at Bullard's Market in accordance with the
Just
final
approve the change of manager
change of manager.
from Goldberg to Noonan.
So moved.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion
Thank you.
carries.
Go. Thank you. Good seeing you again.
Well, welcome the new manager for Bullard's.
Not see you in this capacity.
Okay. The last meeting we had, we started off like with a really big check being presented, so.
Sorry, I'm looking back at Brittany's memo. So according to her memo, you need a vote to transfer, approve the transfer of stock and then the change of manager as I indicated, from Goldberg to Noonan, but you need the,
So you're not just yanking his chain because it's the second time. It's just-
no, I don't want to, because she's gonna have to give a vote to the ABCC, so.
This one's already fallen apart before you even left the room. This is, it's going downhill, but, is that, so we're approving two things, gonna be approved, but through two, does it require two votes, or is it a combined approval
Sale
of the transfer of
and
stock
transfer of
and the
manager.
change in manager?
As long as they're clearly delineated, it really doesn't matter.
So I'd correct my motion to move that we approve the sale of the stock and the transfer of the manager as indicated in the application.
Second?
Second. All those in favor?
Aye, aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries for a third time, more legally perfect.
That's the charming one.
There you go.
Good luck.
All right, very good. Okay, now, I happened to mention in our last meeting, we started it off with the presentation from the county of a very large check. We thought it was really kind of a nice way, I guess, to start agendas, to always have an uplifting topic. So our next item here is for the Board of Selectmen recognizing the following individuals for their dedication to the town of Medfield. Marion Benaldi on her 5-year anniversary on February 16th, and Kevin Shabbat, 5-year anniversary on February 26th. And we have two certificates of appreciation, or recognition, I guess is recognition. Certificate of appreciation to present to both of you. So if we could,
Why don't you both come up and stand behind the selectmen and we'll do a picture.
I feel like we should be standing too, shouldn't we?
Yeah, it's
We should be standing too. It's like,
Last time we did that, it was kind of goofy.
okay.
Are we all standing?
Well, I think we should. We're honoring you guys. Doesn't it seem like we should be?
I think so. It's just because Brittany and Christine like the pictures.
I like pictures, okay? All right, 1, 2, 3. Oops. Perfect, thanks, guys.
All right.
Excellent,
All right,
congratulations.
this one here is, this one is for Kevin.
Thank you.
Congratulations, thanks for your
Thank you.
service to the town,
Yes,
and this one,
congratulations.
I
Thank you
hope
very
this one's for you,
I hope
Marion.
so.
Yeah, this is
Now
for
we're
Marion
in
there.
trouble.
Okay,
Thank
thank you
you.
very much, too.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I know.
You know, just as a side thought, I have a Peloton at home, and it's like you get for your first 10, and then your 25, like we could do a 10-day, 25-day, 50-day, 100. I'm not hearing a lot of confirmation coming from my,
There was a very funny meeting of the selectmen when the county retirement people came out to honor people for the longest service. I think it was Mr. Kennedy Senior. And I think that Mike suggested that Mr. Kennedy might have actually shaved some years off of his amount of service because he had actually been an employee for the town for so long. But it was, Mike asked to go around the room and ask how many years each person had worked for the town, and it was all like 50 plus. It was just amazing.
so Kevin and Marion, there's more of those certificates in your future if you want.
Getting there.
All right. The next item that we have is Marion Benaldi, Town Clerk, to request the Board of Selectmen to vote to sign the election warrant for the annual town election to be held on March 27th, 2023, to vote to appoint Ms. Tracy Klink as warden of the annual town election, and vote to appoint the inspectors for the annual town election. So take it away, Marion.
So, as you know, we have our annual town election coming up on March 27th. So I would like to get the warrant signed so that I can get it posted. We're a little bit ahead of the game, but that's kind of how I like to roll. And then also, if you can vote to appoint Tracy Klink as the warden of the elections and appoint all of our election workers.
Okay, Mark, that's
Wow.
3 separate votes. Okay. So I guess we'll first entertain the first vote to assign the election warrant for the annual town election to be held on March 27th, 2023.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Second vote is to appoint Ms. Tracy Klink as warden of the annual town election.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then, only question on the third one, do we need to read the names, or is it just the names as listed in the memo?
Were they attached to the,
Yes.
They were part of the agenda packet,
okay,
yes. And I-
and just reference that.
Okay, and I see a lot of familiar names. I don't know if there's any new ones there, but they,
There is not. We
Okay.
kind of had the same people
okay.
for a bit.
I would move to appoint the inspectors for the annual town election as indicated in the meeting materials.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye, aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Marion.
Thank you very
All
much.
right.
Nicely done.
Mo is up next. He never gets off as easy as this, but, okay, next we have Maurice Goulet, Director of Public Works, to request the Board of Selectmen to sign the following: contract with Niche Engineering for professional engineering services for the intersection designs of Bridge Street and Route 109, as well as West Mill Street at Adams Street. The second one, Chapter 90 reimbursement request for the Winter Recovery Assistance Program. And the third is a contract with Environmental Partners, Inc. for Water Management Act Order to complete support. Start with the first one.
Good evening. So the first one, the contract with Niche Engineering, we had done a study for a handful of intersections last year. I believe 2 of the intersections the board had given approval to move forward on. So we're looking to move these 2 intersections, the Bridge Street at Route 109 and West Mill at Adams Street. We're going to use our own DPW forces to reconstruct those intersections, try to make them more usable for the public.
Questions?
So the Adams West Street, if I'm not mistaken, that's kind of that blind little,
Yeah, it's on a large curve where the
Yeah.
railroad tracks are, Adams Street coming down the hill. So we're gonna try to straighten that curve out a little bit and super elevate it. Right now, it's elevated the wrong way.
right.
So when you go around that curve with any kind of speed, it's a little awkward for the driver. So trying to get that done. This is what the engineer is gonna do, is give us the proper grades and the proper super elevation for that.
And then the Bridge 109, today it's kind of goofy. Are we building an island? Is that what the plan was?
So I think what the conceptual design was going to be is to put a smaller island in with a keep right sign or something to make sure that the people understand how to navigate through a normal intersection rather than try to guess with that island that's there now.
Makes it more of a T, doesn't it?
Yeah, so it's going to make dedicated, turning traffic movements the way it should be.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's what I thought. I recalled this conversation, so, yeah. We're good.
In Adams and West Mill, there were actually a couple different iterations of plans. Are we doing the ones where we're just moving the curve out further?
Yes, it's gonna be moved out further. We have the property that goes adjacent to the railroad tracks. So it gives us a little time to straighten the curve out. It's not gonna be a tremendous amount of straightening, but the biggest thing is the super elevation of that curve.
That's good.
We can go around that curve faster then, Gus.
Well, that's my thought, but I wouldn't, I don't want to say that, because I don't want to give that away. Hilly, that's right, you do. See, that's insider knowledge, but.
Hi, Hilly Passas, 24 Marlin. I know that there was a discussion to somehow create more of a network of bike accessibility to the bike trail, and it's also in the townwide master plan, and I know that people, residents have often talked about this. Is there any way that you can incorporate into your design some connection between the end of the rail trail and getting onto Adams for bicyclists, because it's a little more, less busy than Harding?
Right. Right now, we're not looking at the bike access for that. We are looking at sidewalk access hopefully for the near future. But we have different kind of areas that are troublesome. There's a culvert there, trying to get, we don't want to cut the roadway width down, so we have to extend the width of that area. It's difficult. It's very expensive to go over a culvert. But we are working on trying to figure that out with our sidewalk plans that we already studied for that, for the town. So we are looking for sidewalk, pedestrian access. As far as bike lanes, You know, we could put sharrows down, but that's really the extent of it, what we could do right now.
Billy, is that where are you looking for that kind of stuff, or are you talking about like the issue on if you're coming from the rail trail and you're on a bike, let's say, you're still gonna have to cross West Mill. And that's a tricky, one way or the other, you gotta do it, and it's a curve if you cross right at Adams Street, so that makes it more complicated. Are you talking about literally having bike lanes there? Are you talking about a crosswalk?
Yeah, I mean, some sort of provision so that it's not just a car lorry intersection, but that, you know, people who want to come from town can navigate this really tricky intersection to then get to the bike trail. And whether that's a sidewalk and they walk their bikes, or the kids, you know, cycle on the sidewalk, or even just navigate the bridge. I understand that the bridge is pretty narrow, but then still can get through the intersection in a relatively safe way, in some way. You know, now that you're designing that, you might as well think about this.
So this is separate from the design of the sidewalk areas.
Yeah.
But this is to fix the intersection so that the cars can travel safely. And then we are looking at the sidewalk connection between the rail trail and the center of town as well, whether it goes up through Harding Street or it goes through Adams Street. So we're working with Complete Streets right now. Those are on our list of Complete Street projects that we're submitting to the state and looking for them to finalize our prioritization plan and then look for funding. So,
It's very exciting.
yeah.
Have you considered doing Adams and Harding both one way, opposite one way?
Opposite for traffic?
Yeah, because they're kind of going, you know, that would give you a lot of room to play with, and people could still travel. You could
It
have.
was not an option at this time, but we can definitely look into it and discuss it. But
You wouldn't wanna do that.
That's-
You're gonna
it's
throw
the
all kinds
neighborhood
of
over
traffic
there.
down by Memorial School.
Well, you could only do that, say, up to West Street, you know, so
you're gonna
people can come back from West Street to,
People on West, if you were going, I'm not sure which way the one-way is, but
yeah.
you'd have people having to go all the way out to Route 27 almost to come in on West Street to get back on.
No, yeah,
The
there's
north?
the stop intersection on West and Adams. Before you get to Memorial, you could go back to North Street there.
Okay, I'm not, we'll have to talk about the concept. I'm not visualizing it the way you are. So, okay. I had a couple of, none of these are showstoppers. These are
No.
just questions. If you recall, on the Adams Street, West Mill, one of the comments that was made was the erroneous rail train crossing sign there. Now, I'm guessing that's not any part of this, but are we doing something to get a correct looking?
we can look at that.
Because I would
and
think that
change
would
out
be,
on
that, yeah, I would,
anytime.
I would seem to me that should be something we do as part of that,
I
because,
think that sign is moved, actually.
Oh,
'cause
is it already
It
moved?
seems to be down on West Street now. When you come out of West Mill, there's a sign that looks exactly like that erroneous one there now. And
so
I assumed that
we
it got
don't have
moved.
one on West Mill anymore, then you're saying?
It was
drive
a
by
sign
it all
looking
the
for
time,
a-
and
I can talk with the chief
Yeah.
to see if we can't do something that's a little more
The
understandable.
issue was that sign was graphically
Yeah.
saying the tracks were in the wrong direction for what
Okay.
the sign said, so it
I've
was just a
been-
matter of getting it right.
I haven't been down Adams Street to look, but there is that sign that was wrong. There's one just like it now
Okay,
on West Street.
that's
where
right.
West Mill
Is
comes
it
out.
still wrong?
If it's right?
Well, it's right, but it's,
Yeah.
the railroad track is a long ways down.
Yeah, okay.
It's
yeah.
not
But
really
we're
needed
gonna
or
be out there,
appropriate.
if you approve this tonight, we'll be out there to take a look at that, and I'll make
Okay.
sure that we address that.
Okay, and then the other, and this is just it's an observation of an inconsistency between the proposal, attachment A,
Okay.
and the wording of our contracts. It basically here says additional, in the additional services in the proposal, the attachment A part, Niche says, additional services will not be accomplished unless Niche Engineering has verbal approval from the client, but the contract terms are that no additional work will be done without formal approval, written approval.
Right.
So the contract, I think,
And our
holds-
contract supersedes what their
Right,
proposal is.
right, which means it's putting you and the DPW on the spot not to provide verbal approval for things without getting formal approval. So, which is, I pointed it out just because it was a point of sensitivity, and It also says if niche, in the termination, if niche engineering is authorized to commence and/or continually providing its services on the project, either verbally or in writing, prior to the full execution of a written contract, such authorization will be deemed an acceptance of this proposal. And again, I think this all gets overwritten by the contract, but it was just a clause in their proposal. It's
First
like
of all, I think their attachment A is only as to scope of work and compensation.
Okay.
That's what it says on there, for
Yeah,
scope
okay.
and compensation only.
So all their extra stuff, you
Okay.
can have all in the world, it doesn't matter.
Okay, and then the only other point I had on that is, in the signature page, there's a place for client authorization, but we're not signing
We're not signing
their
that, just the
proposal,
contract.
we're signing the contract.
Yep.
Okay, that's all I had on that one. Those are easy.
I had one comment. The bridge on West Mill is kind of a pinch point because it's so narrow. There is the railroad bridge just off to the Kingsbury Club side. And if that bridge is sound, that might be a way for the bicyclists to get over to the rail trail down to the end of Adams Street, instead of going,
Do they still have rails and ties on there?
Yeah, I
though?
bet you they do.
Yeah, that would be a large expense.
And that's
to-
not land we've leased from the.
well, but they're so willing to lease it that I would think that they would look into leasing it. But yeah, it probably still has rails.
We
and-
definitely want to make a connection at, some recent point to get the rail trail to the center of town. So, we'll look into different avenues to get that.
Yeah,
to
I
make
just throw
happen.
that out as a possibility, because it occurs to me, so. I would move that we that we approve the contract with Niche Engineering as indicated.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye, aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Second contract is the Chapter 90 reimbursement request for the Winter Recovery Assistance Program. That's in the amount of $256,000.
Yep. So, last
That's
year.
bigger than the check we had last.
Last week it is.
You'll have to bring that into the next meeting.
So we did receive $255,729 from the state to do some work on our roadways for the winter recovery program that they offered from last year. We had a real tough winter with a lot of moisture, heaving of the roadways, so they gave us some money to help fix that. We did utilize that money on Main Street this year, so we're looking to get that reimbursed from the state, and that's what this is.
Well, you just made me think of something when you talked about repairing. There was gonna be some work done on the railroad track
Yep.
on West Street.
So both West Street and South Street, the railroad company was going to redo those in December. They ran into some inclement weather during that time. They could not do it. They would have to close the road for the weekends each time. So we had to postpone them. The chief and I were in conversation with that. They are looking to come back hopefully in the spring to take care of those two areas. We are going to be doing South Street this year, so we're going to hopefully they get that done before we get out there.
Okay,
So-
because you made me think of that, because West Street's horrible. There are some
Right.
nasty potholes when you go
Right.
over that.
And, it's really the railroad's easement over our roadway, so we're not really not supposed to touch that, but
Sure.
we do fill the potholes and try to get them out there, but it's a difficult task.
Sure, okay. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, Pete?
I've never heard of the Winter Recovery Assistance Program. Is that something new?
This is the second time in the last, I would say in the last 10 years that they've done this.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, because the towns would, be in tough situation, and with the regular Chapter 90, it's not enough to supplement.
Yeah, yeah.
Said the materials, I think, said it was, the state set aside $100 million, and they do it based on road miles, so our 256,000 is our share of the,
Based on our 77
Based on
miles
our-
of accepted roads.
So after we build out at the hospital, we'll have more roads, and so we'll get more
let's
money.
pray for a hard winter.
Is there any place in town that's jumping out at you that you know that money has to go to, that got beat up worse than others?
Our highway department's pretty active on our roadways. So regardless if we're in good shape or not, we get the money, which is a good thing.
Oh, okay.
So like I said, our highway department will go out and they'll be proactive and they'll take care of a lot of the issues. And, we still stay with our pavement management program, and it seems to be working pretty well.
Okay.
Is the pavement management plan working out okay, Mo?
Yes, we just had a I'm actually meeting with Beta Group this week. They resurveyed all our roads. Every 5 years, you should resurvey the roads to see what conditions, because you never know what the winter brings to them. So they put another roadway surface rating on them, so it depends on how we manage the program now. So every 5 years it changes. It's for our benefit, so.
Good.
I get worried about seeing the edge of the roadways breaking up at times on some of the places in town, but it is what it is, I guess.
We try to prep all the roads that we do. We try to take care of those. We try to make the base accepted for the top to make it a solid road that's going to last. We use a super pave mix that the compaction of the roadways really give longevity to the roads.
Do we do anything different, or are we looking at doing anything different? Thinking of this complete streets issue, which, as someone who's ridden bikes, where ideally it just soon be to the right of the white stripe, except that's suicidal. Is there anything different in how we design a road if we know that we're trying to make sure the right-hand side is available for
We
bikes?
look at everything for, with the complete streets, we kind of are guaranteeing that we're going to be looking into these roadways to give the multimodal transportation, whether it's pedestrian access, certain areas aren't conducive to bike lanes. You don't want to encourage bike lanes on roads that are very windy and the speeds are high. North Street is a perfect example going towards Dover. We looked at that, and it's just too dangerous of a roadway to encourage bike lanes for that area. I mean, it could be done, but I
wasn't thinking that. I was just wondering that because we're doing more bike lanes, or thinking about doing more bike lanes, the issue Pete's talking about around raggedy edges.
Yep.
For anybody who rides bikes very much, that's where the road's a road, which is why you get thrown out into the lanes. I was just wondering whether, from a technical standpoint, roads will be built a little differently to ensure the edges don't erode that way, given that they're being built for people to deliver.
Plus, the bike lanes are 5 foot wide,
Right.
so you want to make sure that the base is correct,
Right,
and that
right.
the top layer is solid, so.
Yeah. Okay, I just wondered. No, I don't have any other questions. Motion?
Move to accept the Chapter 90 reimbursement request for the RAP program as indicated.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye, aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 2 out of 3. Let's see what you do on the third one here.
The last one with environmental partners is a Water Management Act. Our Water Management Act requires us to do an order to complete. It's basically collecting a lot of data that we have in our system and giving it to the state in a certain amount of, in certain order for them to understand our system. It's kind of an update. So it's a lot of data gathering. It's a lot of filling out a lot of different forms for them to submit to DEPs. But it's because of our Water Management Act, we are forced to comply with that.
Okay. Questions, comments?
Nope.
Pete?
This is secondary to our having been cited by DEP for noncompliance.
I'm sorry?
Is this secondary to our having been cited?
No. This is not. This is, every community has to fill this out.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So this is one I have the highlighting on here. So as I read through it, it says Mass DEP has requested information covering 3 additional topics new to the WMA permit process: cold water fisheries, minimization planning, and mitigation planning. I'm assuming the cold water fisheries is not an issue for us.
No.
I was trying to understand.
This is for all different communities that face, coastal zone management, or all the way down to this, so.
I was thinking maybe we had salmon fishing here, I didn't know about something, but the thing that caught my attention, though, the minimization planning and the mitigation planning, well, let me get to the fundamental. Mass DEP has requested the town submit a response to the WMA OTC by November 15th, 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And then it
We
says you
did
can
the
ask for an
extensions.
extension up to 60 days, which still doesn't get us to here, so.
2 extensions.
You can get 2 extensions, so.
I already got the second extension.
So the first one would get us to January 15th, the next one, March 15th, and this scope says it's going to take like 4 months, 3-4 months to get it all done.
So you submit that, and if they still can do more work on the side to finish up what DEP
Okay,
requires.
so we're good on,
Yes.
we're good on timing.
We are
Okay.
good on time.
That was the administrative question I had. When it talked about, so then it says prepare a draft minimization. I was trying to understand what minimization and mitigation was. First question is, does minimization mean anything about what's our plan to not use as much water as we're allowed to take out of the
It deals with
watersheds?
water conservation and
Okay.
you know, how we do our water restrictions and our water bans and things.
Okay,
so.
and then related to that was, it appeared we were being asked to not draw as much out of well 6, which I think more generally is don't take as much out of the Charles River watershed, because I gather the Charles River watershed is down. So it seemed like they were trying to manage their overall watershed, and they were trying to get us to offload.
It
And my
depends
question
on the
is, do we
drought.
care?
Depends on the drought conditions at the time.
Right.
But we also have the new water treatment plant coming up with wells 3 and 4, which we're
Right.
going to be, we didn't take more out of the Ponset. We're going to be taking more out of the Ponset for what we're registered for. So that'll ease the pressure off of the Charles River as well.
So what we're responding to here, what the state is asking us to do, is not anything that's squeezing us.
It's their recommendation. It's not an order, but
Okay. Okay, well, that's good to know. I guess what I'm really saying is, do we care that much about this, or is this something we can be cooperative with that's not gonna cause a
yeah, I
problem?
mean, we work with DEP all the time to
Okay.
discuss these
Okay.
kind of things.
Okay, I think, oh, no, there's a second page, hold on. I think the delays, yeah, I'll skip it. I had a general comment around the 10% markup on direct costs, and I was saying, well, it was more, I was just curious. Usually, you don't get to mark up your expenses that are pass-through expenses, so I will make that observation, but I wouldn't fall on my sword and not approve the contract over that. I just noted that that was a rather interesting negotiating component of this agreement.
So Marion doesn't get this highlighting, so I don't understand. She's only been here for 5 years.
You gotta work on those subcontractors to have them give you easier, more straightforward proposals
I
that
know.
don't have little things like that in them. All right, we have a motion.
Move to accept the contract from Environmental Partners, Inc. for the Water Management Act order to complete support.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye, aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you all.
Thank
All right,
you, Mo.
thanks, Mo. All right. Let's see, next we have Jeff Hyman to discuss the formation of a groundwater protection advisory committee. Hey, Jeff, welcome.
Thank you. I have a few notes, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. So greetings to everybody here tonight, and thank you for your time. I'm Jeff Hyman, 1 Metacomet Street, and a 30-year resident of our town. I also serve on the Medfield Sign Advisory Committee, and I spent the last 35 years as an environmental health and safety professional. Joining me tonight is my colleague Teresa Prego, along with some fellow advocates in the room. I believe we owe our existence, our community, and the ability to thrive to plentiful, clean, potable water, arguably our single greatest resource. Tonight, we come before the board to propose the appointment of a Groundwater Protection Advisory Committee. Before I provide some detail, I want to mention that this subject actually began as a citizen's petition article, which remains in place at the moment. However, after discussions with town council, and in the spirit of reducing burden at town meeting, we come to you, to the board directly with our proposal. At a high level, the purpose of this committee would be to advise the Board of Selectmen on subjects relating to the protection and sustainability of Medfield's water resources in support of town goals, such as environment quality and sustainability of our community. The committee sees itself as an independent advisory to the Selectmen, while aligning collaboratively with other applicable town boards and committees to specifically review current aspects and impacts affecting Medfield's water resources, create an updated water resource risk profile, collaborate, benchmark, and leverage expertise with neighboring watershed partners, and develop community understanding by strengthening education and awareness campaigns. One only needs to review any number of documents such as the Source Water Assessment and Protection Report, the Water Management Permit, or tune into town board meetings to recognize the massive efforts required of the Water and Sewer Board, the Board of Health, town departments who work hard every day to maintain operations and regulatory compliance. They're busy. We believe the complex and multi-layered subject of groundwater protection can benefit from a dedicated and specifically focused group. So here are 3 examples of how this committee can help support town goals. We can help to research, discuss, and bring forth opinions to help inform existing boards and departments, as well as town administration when water-related decisions are in mind. Help meet town goals by complementing and supplementing Town of Medfield climate action planning efforts. For example, the tackling of water-related issues that may be beyond the scope or bandwidth of other public bodies or grassroots groups. Supplement town resources with time dedicated to public education and awareness as required under our water permit. Topics may include how our water system works, how residents affect watersheds, water conservation measures, use and handling of contaminants such as pesticides, fertilizers, chemicals, and changing PFAS standards. We propose up to 5 members, including from other boards, with expertise in such areas as hydrology, groundwater management, hazardous waste management, conservation, engineering, environmental protection, forestry, irrigation, policy, public health, and communications. Not all of that, but such as that, and certainly beyond. Regarding budget and funding, as an appointed committee, we would have the authority to take steps to identify any available government and non-government funding or grants to aid in our efforts. So some may be thinking, we already have many committees. Isn't this just another committee that we will have difficulty trying to fill with volunteers? We don't think so. By example, we had an outpouring of interest in the citizens' petition from people wanting to sign, even after it was submitted. And the subject of water security was further mentioned in Denise Garlick's report to the community, with water concerns top of mind by many people. Some may argue we already have a water and sewer board and a board of health working on water issues. How is this committee different? Citizen advocacy in the form of this committee can add value to present efforts, and increased community education and awareness about water issues has been publicly mentioned as a need. So we are confident the many town infrastructure challenges, immediate permitting needs, EPA responses, and other concerns are handled well by our existing boards. But a groundwater protection advisory committee can help expand capabilities by honing in on the long-term, big picture view to stay ahead of the curve. And Teresa, I don't know if you want to add anything, or is there anything else that I might have missed?
Teresa Prego, 41 Pleasant Street. This question of what is our groundwater situation, what are we doing for conservation, has come up with several different projects in town, the State Hospital being one, the Dale Street School being another, and then today's coverage of our response to the Water Management Act. I can see an opportunity there for an abridged version available to town members on what our response was and what all that data means. And so I think that one of the areas to highlight here is the opportunity for education for members of the town, and to take a lot of data and be able to consolidate into something perhaps more understandable, and have that available for some of these other projects, in addition to just looking at what can we be doing to conserve, where is legislation going likely, and how can we be proactive versus reactive.
Questions, comments?
No, I mean, I'll jump right out and say, I thoroughly support this, I think, with what's been going on and a lot of discussions with water, and water is like such a precious commodity, and any extra sets of eyes, especially from citizens that can look into things and help educate us as they reference some of our goals, call out water conservation, watching the preservation of it. So you have my support. I don't see a negative to this. I just see more people bringing more information forward in better half of the town.
I saw this as just nothing but positive, and I'm very appreciative of the two of you for bringing it forward, 3 of you, 4 of you, whatever it is. I was fascinated to learn that you both had backgrounds in this. Teresa, I just knew was a good soccer player. But, you know, I think this is going to do nothing but help the town, so it makes a lot of sense to me. And our water is one of our most important resources, so whatever we can do to protect it.
We want to be collaborative. We're not competing with anybody. We don't want to duplicate. So being aligned with other boards and just being able to work together and being a body really helps us. So I thank you for the comments.
So my job when they're in complete agreement is to make sure that we're not in complete agreement on everything. First off, I appreciate what you're trying to do, and certainly at a broad philosophical level, I absolutely both agree about the criticality of water. I look back, having been here for 27 years now, 27 years. I think anybody that was here that long ago probably looks at the water today as good as it is and said, yeah, but it was even better a long time ago before we actually had to do some things to keep it clean. I do have a few questions, though. How, right now, to the point you made about there's a water board, there's a Department of Public Health, how do you see this committee, let me ask a more general question. Have you talked to those boards and gotten their feedback on what they think of this idea?
Attended some meetings, Zoom, wasn't able to get a word in at one of the meetings recently. Just wanted to just sort of introduce myself. You know, I guess this, you know, started off as a petition and then it went this way. So I guess if we could have reversed all that, we would have maybe started here and that, you know, but that's the way it worked. But I think, all I can say is I think it feels pretty positive. We want to be collaborative. I guess if we exist as a body reporting to the selectmen, then we have the ability to hopefully, you know, knock on those doors in a way that we can attend meetings or have conversations with members of boards so that we can understand, because we want to know what are their goals and aspirations. You know, they publicize quite a bit, but we need to learn a little bit more about what's on their mind as well. I think we want to stay focused on the water protection side, not, you know, but I think we're hoping they're open to us meeting with them, understanding their goals and aspirations so that we can see where we can complement that and sort of share what we believe is important to help advise. Again, we'll give advice. You can take it, you can change it, you can leave it, we can work together, but the goal is to really work together. We know everybody's busy, if you think about it. The things that Mo mentioned, they're regulatory. I mean, they're requirements, they're compliance, they're huge. This can only complement all those aspects. We want to be able to help there.
So that's my, as I listened to you talk, the thing in my head, I was trying to say, well, is this a committee we're creating as an independent advisory / oversight board that's sort of independently assessing what the DPH or the water department are doing, or will it be seen by those boards, those departments, as this is a group of people who have a specialized expertise, who actually they see the issues we're dealing with. Well, let's take PFAS. You know, well, we know we have to do certain things with PFAS because of the regulations that are coming, and we know it's really expensive. But whether, and Mo, you can defend yourself if I'm shortchanging the water department, but whether the water department has hydrogeologists that basically know how to do the technical analysis to figure out where the plume is going to come to, or can review the studies that have been done to give a qualified risk assessment of whether we've got our arms around this thing or whether it looks like this problem's going to get worse. It's that kind of a more detailed environmental technical job. If that's what it is, I can see how, whether it's the water department, whether it's the Department of Public Health, saying we've got some people that really know what they're talking about in this area, where they would see you as a support. But that does require a degree of collaboration, and it also requires an avoidance of advocacy independent of, I wouldn't want to do something where I have a committee that has a set of responsibilities that it sees as independent of the responsibilities established departments and boards have. So on the surface, this whole concept, I actually do like it. But I've learned over the last 2 years or so, I'm very sensitive to the tones that committees, that the spontaneously formed committees take. And I would only want to be sure that this is seen across the board as a positive benefit. Quite aside from that, even that's selling it on technical grounds. But the points you've made about education, I think I can speak probably for the water department and anyone else who's worried about how do you get people to stop watering their lawns in the summer, or how do you get them to be more responsible in how they conserve things. I would think any committee that can push the educational side of this thing to people who are living here, to help them better understand why why you're being asked to do certain things, why you don't need to do some things you're doing right now, how you could do those things in a more environmentally effective way. I can see that as being something that every board and department would be happy, and the town as a whole would be delighted with. So that piece of what you brought in there is real easy for me to see. But you see what I'm getting
So
at is
there's like couple of questions. I
Sure.
thought. So number one, I can speak for the committee. I don't see us, we are not overseeing anybody.
Okay.
And we are not prying into anything beyond public information. I mean, if I attend meetings, that's the information I have. I'm happy to have a conversation with somebody, but at the end of the day, yeah, that's how we see it. So we want to educate, we believe there, we have some expertise in the ability to, almost brand our program. If we're trying to get people to comply with restrictions that might come about, or just understand why we're doing something, we need to sort of hit everything we can. Everything from whether it's, Medfield TV or a mailer, or, there's so many things you can do. You can get schools involved and kids involved, and, there's the whole litany of how Medfield can sort of come around the thing about water and make it a thing, right? So I don't know if that answered all the questions.
Christine, if I'm putting it on your spot, you can play for time here, but if anything you've heard here, are there any issues, subtleties that the three of us should be thinking about on this? On the surface, this sounds like a good idea, but are there any?
I think that before you move forward with it, and I think it is a good idea to move forward, but I think before you do that, I think you have to have a conversation with the other boards and committees
Okay.
about that, whether
Yeah,
we
we
invite them here to a
welcome that.
meeting or just it's just.
Absolutely.
yeah.
I mean, whether it's with us, not with us, however you do that, it's up to you. If you want to do this or not.
One of the disciplines we've built in, I think Mike Marcucci probably gets credit for a few years ago, is that we've started to become more rigorous about defining committee charters, and I think that would be that would be part. I mean, I wouldn't want you to walk out of here tonight and say, yeah, I don't think they like the idea. It's not going to happen. I actually think there's a good chance that this thing would happen, and we really, quite aside from you thanking us for giving you the time, I want to thank you for taking the time to even pull people together to offer this up. So that's probably a more deserved thanks than just the fact you got a spot on our agenda tonight. But
Thank you.
but that's sort of how we can work through some of the expectations is around the definition of that charter.
I think some of the other towns, and doing some research before you were coming in tonight, some of the other towns will actually have a certain number of citizen volunteers, and then they will have representatives from those committees that have already been appointed. So there would be a Board of Health appointment, there'd be a Board of Water and Sewer, so you kind of put everybody at the same table, which I think is an
Yeah,
interesting
we-
idea.
I mentioned that.
Yeah.
And it is, yeah, it's a mix, which we would intend for this to be as well. So we're not looking to oversee, nor are we looking to, well, I can fully do a groundwater hydrology plan. That's not my intent to offload that off to Jeff and I.
Yeah.
But I think that it is important that we coordinate with the other towns too, because while we're responsible for Medfield, the groundwater doesn't care what town it lies on. So I just wanted to be able to do that, which is probably not a fair expectation to ask the formal town boards and employees to always be doing as well.
There's one thing you said at the start, and I've got to say, I think I'm speaking for all three of us, but I'm speaking for myself, and Eileen and Pete can
I'll let 'em know
clarify
if
their
it's not.
positions. You talked about hoping that as a committee, you would have an easier time being able to get to meetings and have people listen to you. And I would hope that there's not any citizen in the town that can't go to a meeting and feel comfortable that, in a public open meeting, that they feel comfortable, they can be heard, and that the committee they're taking the time to visit
Yeah, I
actually appreciates that they showed up and put the effort into it. Maybe you won't get unlimited time, I understand that, but if there's
it's probably
committees
more
that-
of a Zoom challenge than anything,
Oh,
you know.
okay, got
So
it.
I know that if I want to, attending a live meeting is better. That
'Cause I
was
gonna
really
say,
on
if
me.
that's a problem,
No,
I
that,
actually
I'm not
think
saying,
this is
I'm not
what we
implying
wanna
that.
hear about.
Not at all.
Okay,
I
okay.
think it was just, you know, my issue. Yeah, it's really trying to be positive, and collaborative, so. And again, having input from boards or members from boards, certainly helpful, more than helpful, so.
Is it fair for, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, can we task these people with going to the different committees and making their presentation and then reporting back to us? Board of
So let me get
Health.
more, can I get more basic for a second? Is it
Sure.
fair to say the three of us are all on board with this? We think it's a good idea, we'd like to see it move ahead? We recognize we gotta figure out what it looks like, but we also, the basic thing you're asking for, I think you've got
Okay.
endorsement for.
I think, yeah, I mean, I think if Water and Sewer says absolutely not, I mean, you know, I'd have to rethink, but it makes sense to me, and I just think that we need to do the due diligence of sending these people out to the different committees that we want them to touch base with and give us the feedback.
So my only question for you, Christine, is that the logical next step, to throw the burden on them to go do that, or is there, what would be the logical next step?
And if I could
Basically,
ask,
I'm not trying to throw all the work on you
Which of these
guys.
groups are you asking us to go to as well? I mean, are we talking about 6 different groups that we need to get on their agendas, or is it 2?
I'm
What's
thinking
the-
Board of Health, Water and Sewer, and maybe Concom.
Agreed.
So my suggestion would be that this group or their representatives go to the various boards involved right now with groundwater protection, have a dialogue, may educate them as well in terms of what are the issues and the needs, and then come back with a proposal for your consideration for their marching orders or charter, whatever you want to
Yeah,
call
like a
it.
draft charter to
Right.
give to us as to what the committee's gonna be.
And
Could be
Christine, the
doing.
reason I'm asking you is I'm feeling a little bit like, oh, you came in with a real great idea, let's dump everything on your shoulders, you go talk to a bunch of people and then come back to us, and I'm
I'm happy to do that as well.
That's fine. This is really to keep the lift off of you, and but it sounds, that's a reasonable group of people.
okay.
They're all pretty friendly. I'm gonna leave you some packages, things that will help you as well.
Just in, and this may or may not have been the issue you had on Zoom, but at least some boards and committees, they all have an agenda going into a meeting. Some are more flexible than others with an ability of citizen comments. But if you want to be assured, you want to contact somebody in advance and make sure you're on the agenda.
Understood.
So just, maybe I'm pushing this too hard here, but I would think the water department would be one for sure. I think you're right, Pete, Concom would be one, DPH would be another.
Yep.
Hilly's here, the climate action plan that partly is looking at stuff, so I would think that would be, the that's somebody you should talk to.
Yeah, we have had that conversation.
Okay,
I think
okay.
you don't have
Mo
capacity to
himself
take
has
on
a lot
water
of
at this point.
knowledge. Mo himself has a lot of this knowledge.
So that's 4. Well, even, feels like I'm leaving somebody, I'm not thinking Parks and Rec is not.
Conservation, you mentioned.
Mass
conservation.
DPH that we're talking to?
No, Board of Health.
No, our town.
So
That's probably that, I think.
Probably the planning board, because they control zoning, and there's a huge chunk in zoning under groundwater protection, there's a
It
whole
might be
section
worth
on that.
talking, yeah, okay, that might be.
Sounds good.
So that's 4 that are directly involved with water, 1 that planning board that's involved with a lot of the regulation we have. So it'd be 5 groups.
Okay, we'll hit it.
And Mark's advice about letting them know ahead of time you'd like to come, and if they can give you some time on their agenda to talk and explain what you're doing, that's probably the best way to make sure you have some time on their agenda to talk, that's long enough.
Okay,
Heck,
And
you-
we can actually reach out to all of them and get you a spot on the agenda.
thank you.
I'm happy to meet if that assists anybody.
You got 15 or 20 minutes from us here.
This
If
sounds
you get
great.
it from us,
I-
you get it from anybody.
Honestly, I'm gonna play the lottery. This was good. Thank you.
Okay, well,
I
thank
made
you,
3
Dan.
copies.
Thanks.
Could we
Appreciate
just
it.
clarify what we're coming back with?
Thanks,
It's a
Jeff.
charter and the response of each of those groups? What are you looking for?
Yeah,
So it can be
let's,
specific.
I wouldn't put you quite on the hook to write a charter, because I think there's gonna be considerations, but I think if you could give us, let's make it a little softer sounding, that give us a description of what your committee is proposing to do, perhaps how it proposes to work with the various boards and committees, how you actually see that playing out. And then if in going through that whole thing, there's anything that you need from the town or the Board of Selectmen in order for you to be successful at that, let us know what that is, so we can talk about whether we're in a position to commit to it. So I would think those would be good. I would feel good if I knew that the boards and departments you're talking to gave us feedback that said, I think this is gonna be a good thing, it's gonna really help us out in certain areas. I'm thinking you may get some sense out of all those things you talked about that you could do, that you said, but not all of this stuff. You may, in talking with people, get a better sense of what's already being handled pretty well and where the gaps are, so that might also help in your own concept of, how do you not boil the ocean, the water resource that it is, trying to do everything. So, okay. Thank you very much for coming. This is great. Okay. All right. Let's see. Next, discussion items. Follow-up discussion of the 2023 goals. Pete and Eileen, you both got hard copies from me, because Pete, you didn't have a colored one last time, so I gave you a copy there.
Thank you so much.
What I did was we deferred the conversation we had last week, or last meeting, to not really talk too much about the goals, because I hadn't done all the work I should have done. I sent out both this update, which is effective up to date today, which took some of the pending changes that were in the prior version, and the ones that looked like they were reasonable that I thought I could call a shot on, I accepted. So they're not in this version, but then I also sent the last version, so if you wanted to see what I made go away, it was easier to spot. So that's,
Can I just have
Yes.
a comment? I think there, some of the things that I had proposed in the last meeting, and I had sent a version I couldn't see here, so I just emailed everybody, a version.
so I used, you had highlighted the version dated the last time. I took the highlighted version that you sent out. The only item that I didn't bring in here was hiring the sustainability coordinator, because we've had an extended discussion. We weren't gonna do that right here.
Yeah, I think yours is in there, from what I got.
The secure grant funding and raise awareness of.
That, I think that's in here.
Yeah, secure grant
So, and
funding
I'll tell you,
for
but I can tell you what I did was, I put the secure grant funding, the first one is under environmental sustainability and resilience, the first main area. The second secure grant funding was against climate action. So I tried to put it where it sounded like it belonged. The other three on the last page, I think it
Open
is.
space protection and management.
I put those all there, even though some of those could have easily gone under the forest and wildlife management, but I had to put them in one place, so I put them under the open space. Because you've got stuff in here about teaching private homeowners, and it's like, well, we don't actually have that category. So I tried to park it in the spot that sounded the best, but if you have thoughts about where it should go differently, just feed it back in.
I think I just opened up the wrong version. The only amendment I would have is where, it's the grant funding to look at the implementation of the municipal vulnerability plan. I think the municipal hazard plan should also be mentioned here.
You have a municipal hazard plan and a municipal vulnerability plan?
I think they're the same. The,
You know, I don't disagree with your point. I think it's just a matter of making sure we have the right.
isn't it the
name for it.
MHVP? Isn't that?
No, it's the hazard mitigation plan. You adopted it at the same time.
Yeah.
Hilly, could you just make sure you're using the microphone, please?
Oh, sorry, yes.
So what you're saying is, we have whatever's correct about the configuration of plans, I don't think we would disagree with. So the municipal vulnerability plan, you're saying the hazard mitigation plan, is that a separate document, or is that an output or consequence of the vulnerability plan? If it's two document, if,
I see both online, and I wasn't part of that process, so I don't.
I think Sarah would know
Yeah,
how to do
there,
that.
so we got the municipal vulnerability preparedness grant to then prepare the hazard mitigation plan. So they're two separate documents, but we tend to refer them to them as one.
So, I guess we'll check with Sarah.
So Gus, my issue with this is that I didn't see your email, and I haven't looked at this until just now. So can we put off having to accept this until our next meeting?
Yeah, yes, we can. If you, so we're gonna defer this, well, so Hilly, did you have any other comments besides that?
I with Pete, I didn't have a lot of time.
Okay, then I guess we'll pick this up. The other thing is Kathy McDonald, who also had provided, so let me just comment on hers. She's out of town, I think. I got an automatic reply to her, but under Goal 4, which is promoting healthy and responsible development of Medfield's youth, when you do look at this, my comment about hers is that twofold. Number one, they may be sounding a little bit too internal to Medfield outreach. So in terms of specificity, I think we might want to do some wordsmithing there. And then the other one is, like, one of the things she has is continue to provide high-quality services to Medfield residents, including youth. It's like, that's not continuing to do what we do is not something we need to carry in an action plan. Action plans are the things that we're going to do that are different. So actually, when you look at hers, I think she took what came out of their strategic plan and figured out which ones she thought were pertinent to this plan and kind of sent them to us. But I think there's some wordsmithing, not necessarily that the things she's got are wrong, but something like, keep doing what we're doing is not a goal. So we don't need that in there. And she's got a bunch in there, so let's at this point, unless anybody sends me significant changes before our next meeting, don't plan to issue another version. This will just be the version that we will defer discussion of until our next meeting.
Okay.
Does that work okay?
Yep,
All right.
absolutely.
Okay. And that's to first March meeting. Okay. This is like that, the man on the Boston, the man who never returned. This is like the town action plan. It never gets to its destination.
We're
But
getting there,
we're getting there. It's getting better. It's just, we never quite get to closure, which is fine. Let's see, next. That's the fastest discussion of these goals we've had this year. This is a good thing. Action item, request for a permanent transfer of Patrolman Garrett Ledbetter to the Rentham Police. I think this is just at this stage a general discussion that we'll have tonight. We don't have anything before us specifically, but we know there's a request.
We have his official request.
You do have his official, so maybe you can just publicly brief us on the situation and then.
Yes, Officer Ledbetter is interested in going to the Rentham Police Department. Rentham is aware of our staffing situation and recognizes that we may not be able to grant this tonight. And it might be something that we are willing to do in the future. We're not denying the request to transfer, but I think we need to delay until we build our department up with a few more officers before we can do that.
Comments?
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. That was my concern when I saw it, but I know, I certainly don't want to prevent it from happening, but if we can delay it so we can get our staff to the numbers. I know we have more coming on, so as more come on, we can afford to let folks transfer, but as long as it's not immediate, I think that's important to the town.
It makes sense to delay if that's what we need, if that's what our department needs. Yeah, makes sense to me.
And that sounds right to me. I think in general, we wouldn't prevent people from doing something that they want to do.
Yeah, I think you live there, so I certainly know it's
Oh,
it'd be a
absolutely.
great destination for them.
Okay. Next is a board committee appointment, appointing Rose Tebow to the Council on Aging Board. Any comments, questions? We got a request specifically from the Council on Aging to do that.
Yeah, that's what I said. I mean, no, if they're looking for her to join and she's eager to join, I don't want to get in the way of that.
Pete?
Appreciate that.
That's fine with me. So moved.
Fine with me. Motion's on the table.
Oh, second, sorry.
All those in favor?
Aye, aye.
Opposed? Motion
I'm
carries.
usually pretty good at that.
Okay.
I missed that one down there.
Okay, next item is MAPC contract for economic development, visioning, and planning to be funded with a housing choice grant.
And remember, this is the one that is inappropriately named the Housing Choice Grant because it is economic development. We are not looking at additional housing. I know we had that conversation several months ago when we were first notified of the award, but this is strictly looking at economic development in that area.
This was in our meeting minutes, if you want to know the truth, for November 15th. Because I watched the YouTube. I happened to watch it today. I'm like, yes, I recognize this.
Questions, comments?
I just, I had not realized that we were doing this, and so I was just wondering, Chris, what the genesis of this is. Just, I mean, it's always good to study and get more information, but
Well, I think that when we accepted the grant, apparently on November 15th, we had talked about applying for this. One of the goals that you've put both on my list and apparently has appeared on the Selectmen's list is trying to diversify our tax base. So in order to do that, we're looking at economic development in those areas that are still zoned industrial and or commercial.
Yes.
okay.
And the reason Mo got off so easy is because I had more highlighted points here. The idea that we're doing this, that we're trying to figure out how to get more economic development out of our commercial and industrial space, totally on board with. But I went through Exhibit A, and I had a whole bunch of questions. And if I wrapped them all up into bottom line, we're taking a state grant, so I understand we're not spending our own town money, but we're taking a state grant to fund consultants from MAPC to basically help us carry out an economic analysis of commercial and presumably commercial and industrial development in the corner of town that's sort of off North Meadows Road. And I kind of basically said, who's qualified to actually be doing that? And this thing doesn't actually say who the consultants will be, doesn't give us any if I were in a commercial world and a client hired me or a consultant like me to do an economic analysis, I would have a strong, if I were in a company that did this, we would have as strong a resume or resumes. We would identify the people, we would have their backgrounds, and you would sit there and say, yep, this is somebody who really knows how to do this. As opposed to, this is state money being passed through to a semi-captive consulting, who's done a lot of good work for us. This is not a slam on MAPC. But I'm saying, well, due diligence on this thing should involve actually, who is it that's going to do this? And, do they actually have the chops to do this kind of economic analysis. This is not just community outreach, what would you like to see? This has to be some hard-nosed business planning. So I'm not against this at all, but with what I see in Exhibit A, if I am the client paying for this, which sort of we all are, I would kind of like to have more confidence that I really know that the people doing it have that business
We can ask them
expertise.
who they're assigning from their
I'd
staff
like-
to the
I'd
project.
like to do that.
Yep, that's not a problem.
I had a couple things else. Ultimate goal of the plan will be to develop a long-term vision for this area and identify potential zoning changes that may be necessary or beneficial to accomplish those goals. When I read that, I was thinking, yeah, what would, do they have any kind of examples? I don't know what that kind of zoning change would look like. It's not like I need to know what we would do. It's just that it was like what kind of zoning changes are we talking about here? I don't know. And then a little farther down, the town's industrial and commercial zoning districts were not necessarily the result of a long-term economic development strategy. Rather, they are in place because these locations are the historic sites of these more intensive uses. I said, sure, but how might this point be relevant in this analysis? That's where the zone is. So I just didn't understand how that, I wasn't sure what that point actually meant in terms of the analysis is going to take place. You got to deal with what we got, okay?
Ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
So it's only dealing with what's currently commercial, not looking at what could be commercial?
Well, it's looking at a particular, you won't be able to see this, but this is the zone that's kind of, if you think of West Mill Street, West Street, and North Meadow, that whole mass of property, going out West Street a little bit, that whole area there, which is where we basically have a lot of industrial stuff being done. The question is, are we taking advantage of it as well as we might? Yeah, and it's a great question to ask. I would like us to do that, because we've
Well,
got.
the planning board is doing it, they're doing a 109 study as well for other alternative commercial uses. This grant was just for this one little section of town, yeah.
And that's near where I live, and it's like you go buy a lot of dirt piles, a lot of unused property, and I actually think the Potpourri area is doing a lot better now. There's more stuff going in down there, so, what else could we do? I think it's a great question. It's just that but it requires some hard-nosed analysis, I think, to really get somewhere.
I think one of the things that I remember, Gus, was that when I was looking at the zoning for that area, that you weren't allowed to put an office building in. And it struck me that would be like one of the most likely uses in
So maybe
Medfield
that's the
would
kind
be
of
an
zoning
office structure. And yet, I think that was a problem when they were trying to do that building that's at the corner of West Mill and 27, that does have offices where the,
Oh, yeah, the ones that are on the right there. There's also some on West
Where
Mill.
David Sharf used to have his office right in there?
where the gym thing is.
Yeah.
Where the garden continuum is.
Yeah,
and
good,
all
yeah,
that,
exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that
Just
had
a
to be
comment, Jeff Hyman, Metacomet Street, you may want to, while you're looking at qualifications of the people doing the study, you might want to also know where have they done this work? What other what other towns, and get some
So
references to see what they
they're the
did they-
regional planning agency, so they can give us examples, but they've been doing these grants for all of us that are in the 101 towns.
Thanks.
Yeah, my interest here there's not a veiled criticism behind it. It's just like due diligence for this kind of a study. It seems like you'd be looking for the credentials of the people that are doing the work.
It's $45,000, right? That's what it was?
Yeah.
Just as a side comment, talked about we're going to reach out to 5 or 6 real estate agents. Those should be real estate agents with experience in commercial development as opposed to residential, because we have a lot of real estate agents, but maybe not all that would necessarily have that strength. And I guess maybe I had a bunch of comments, but I guess the only real substantial one that I think probably has to be taken into consideration here is the state hospital development, even though it's not in this zone, is changing the context for this zone. So that's probably an important thing to keep in mind in terms of thinking this whole thing through. So I don't think it was just a discussion, right? Do we have to? Is this an approval for something that we're looking for here, or?
I think we were looking to approve the MAPC contract. I'll have them make those changes and we'll have it come
Okay,
back before
great,
you.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, next, we have vote to increase the override for the Municipal Building Stabilization Fund in fiscal year 2024 by 2.5% to $1.131 million. For those in the audience or listening, we established the stabilization fund at $1 million a couple of years back, made provisions in that establishment of that fund to be able to continue to fund it up to an additional 2.5% each year, but not more than 2.5% increase each year. And if we ever chose in a year not to do that, it's not like you can just defer it. You basically lose that opportunity. So right now, given that we have some deferred maintenance and things like that, the whole point is to continue to let that grow a little bit. And the goal here is to really not have to, the goal is to be able to fund the kind of activities we need to undertake out of this stabilization fund, so we smooth the capital the taxation to support capital needs. We keep it as smooth as we can from year to year. So, comments, questions?
No, will make sense. We'll go second.
Pete, questions, comments?
Nope, I'm good.
Entertain a motion.
Vote to increase the override for the Municipal Building Stabilization Fund in fiscal year 2024 by 2.5%.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Next, authorize the town administrator to sign the opioid settlement agreements with the following: Teva, Allergan, Walgreens, Walmart, and CVS.
So moved.
There we go.
Before you do that, I have a question.
For anyone wondering, what are the selectmen doing buying opioids from all these people?
And why am I their dealer?
Do you want to just briefly,
Sure. So this is, do you want to bring up?
or,
We can show you what we've been looking at. So we've been signing these settlement agreements. I think our first one we signed a little over a year ago. And these are the settlements that the Attorney General is negotiating with these different groups. And they have set out a payment plan for us with all of these different groups and the amount of money that we will receive. So you can see on the screen here the different years we have calculated out and the amount of money that we are set to receive each year for this. So the top four will be the additional ones that we're being asked to sign on. And they appear to be smaller than some of the other ones we have signed.
so it's,
Sorry, it's actually, the ones in gray are the ones that we're sending on tonight. The green
Right.
ones are-
Oh, sorry, the green ones are the ones we already did.
Right.
Correct.
and so without those, actually, no, we would, what were we getting just from the green one? I guess in '24, we'd get $16,000 from the green ones, but with these additional ones we're signing on, we're projecting to get almost $50,000.
Yes.
This is a new settlement of a
Right.
new class, or a more recent class action
Right.
against those retailers.
And this is what, I don't know if we want to talk about it now, but this is what changed our approach and why we're asking you to reopen the annual town meeting warrant tonight so we can create the opioid stabilization fund now that we're receiving additional funds than we expected.
Right. And Christine, could you just comment on what we're using the funds for right now?
Sure. Right now, we're anticipating an additional clinician who will work in the outreach office and will be shared under the Human Services Division for outreach and for the Council on Aging. All of these opioid funding come with very strict regulations and rules on how you can spend that money. And that was the other impetus for creating the stabilization fund for that. So right now, our plan would be to fund this clinician, and we're working in the warrant committee because, as always, the question is how long, once we accept this employee, how long will they be funded by the settlement before then the taxpayers have to assume that payment? So we're working on how that would work.
Do we know how long this settlement runs for?
I think if you go out,
36 is what I saw?
yeah.
They vary by settlement.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, we should also just mention that a lot of these are estimates,
Mhm.
particularly for the Walmart settlement money. We're supposed to get around $51,000 from them over the course of 6 years. But what they've said up front is you're gonna get most of that in the first 3 years. In the second 3 years, you'll get a little bit less. So we don't know how much we're going to get each year. So these, these totals in row 11 really are estimates and estimated projections, I should say.
But if anything, if what they're saying is true, all the more reason for a stabilization fund to take
Correct.
what's coming in early and having it there and managing it for the full time. But I think people can take away that while this isn't a permanent annuity, it's sort of a long-term flow of money coming in for some period of time.
Right, and we've been working with outreach. I know Kathy McDonald's appeared before the board for the last several years, advocating for a clinician. And now that we're asking her to oversee human services, we're finding that, we need to have those same conversations, not only with the population that outreach typically serves, but with the Council on Aging as well. So I think it'll really provide a benefit to both of those.
No, I think you've just watched what was on the news either today or yesterday, and they were, I think it was Channel 5 or Channel 4, they actually went to people that are living in tents in Fall River. These people that have just gotten addicted to opioids, which then leads to heroin, which then, it's just, and they asked this one young woman who was a D1, 40 scholarships offered to her. She blew her knee out in high school, got addicted to opioids, which then led to heroin. She's now clean X number of years. And her comment was, and this is where I think of Kathy right away, is it's the conversation before they start getting on it. It's not the person that gets hurt. It's talking to them beforehand, because God forbid they then get hurt. There's just so much education. So if that's what this money is going to be directed towards, that's outstanding.
So motion?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next, a vote to reopen the annual town meeting warrant to include the following articles. This ties in with what we just
Yes.
approved. An article, creation of an opioid stabilization fund, and then an initial funding appropriation to that stabilization fund. So what we're doing tonight is basically, we would be voting to reopen the warrant.
We'll have two articles. One, we'll create the stabilization fund and set up the mechanism to fund it, which will be
Right.
these settlement agreements. And the second article will be appropriating money from that opioid stabilization fund to the outreach budget. So it'll be a budgetary offset.
Okay, and once that has been done, then we will close the warrant again.
I would move to reopen the annual town meeting warrant.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Warrant is now open.
And now it's closing.
Watch the articles as they flow into the warrant.
The lights will flicker.
We'll now hear a second motion.
Move to add two warrants, one for the creation of an opioid stabilization fund, and a second one for a funding appropriation of the opioid stabilization fund.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. And we'll go for yet another.
Move to close the annual town meeting warrant.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
It is now closed.
Thank you.
I defy anyone to find government working faster at any level than what you've just witnessed tonight. Okay, citizen comment?
I have no registered comments for this evening.
Citizen comments? Then we have a consent agenda. The first one, proclamation recognizing the following individuals in Boy Scout Troop 89 who recently earned the rank of Eagle Scout. That is Dylan Reese Corbett and Brandon Peter Mack. The second is a request from Medfield History Day Weekend Committee 2023 to place sandwich boards in the usual locations for 2 weeks prior to the Medfield History Day weekend from April 14th to April 30th. And I'm aware that there's a comment, I think, public comment on that one. Let me just read the items, and then we'll come back to that. Next, the Council on Aging requests one-day beer wine permits for the following dates. The March Supper Club on Wednesday, March 15th from 4 to 7. These are all 4 to 7, so I'm not going to keep repeating it. April Supper Club on April 19th. May Supper Club on May 17th. June Supper Club on June 21st. July Supper Club on July 19th. August Supper Club on August 16th. And September Supper Club on September 20th. For any of you who are trying to write those down in your book, they're all Wednesdays. Last item is the Souls of Medfield Running Club request to place a sandwich board advertising their upcoming 10K race on North Main from March 4th to March 18th. And with that, I'll loop back. Chris, I think,
We have one more, we had a revision to add the Zulo Gallery in.
I got it.
Yep.
Oh, the red one.
Yeah, the red one. I marked these up ahead of time, and then there's always an update, so, all right. The fifth one, the Zulu Gallery is requesting a one-day beer wine permits for Zulu First Thursdays. So these are Wednesdays, the supper club. This is Zulu Thursdays, March 2nd, April 6th, May 4th, and June 1st, from 5:30 PM to 11 PM, and Saturday, March 4th, from 5:30 PM to 11 PM for a live music fundraiser.
It's convenient that it's the night of the Affordable Housing Trust meeting. I like that.
Yeah, especially if you have flexibility where you meet. Okay, with that, I think we had one request for citizen comment on the history weekend.
So instead of just asking for Chris
Can I
Potts,
ask you to
7 Curve Street.
Identify yourself. Yes, ma'am.
Chris Potts, 7 Curve Street. Instead of just asking for the sign request, I thought it would be helpful to give you just a quick little taste of what's going on. So we have for Friday, April 28th, Saturday, April 29th, and Sunday, April 30th, representatives from all the historical groups in town. From Dwight Derby House to Kingsbury Gristmill to the Peak House to Historical Society to Hannah Adams Women's Club, Lowell Mason House, we're all coming together to put together this weekend. So we have, they're all going to be open both Saturday and Sunday. We have the town clock and steeple tour. We have Richard DeSorga is coming back to do a walking tour of downtown. We have the library participating with the children's scavenger hunt. We have, we're bringing back the trolley tour on Sunday, and John Thompson's going to be doing a Medfield State Hospital history tour as well. So there's going to be a lot going on that weekend. I put together we're also going to be incorporating an Indigenous component to this, but we're also looking at doing a bigger event in the fall around Indigenous specifically. I put together a checklist because I know that for these events, we like to have checklists for a future approval. And I just was hoping to get a little bit of guidance. We did get Park and Recreation approving use of the Hinckley lot for the trolley, which is what was done in the past. We plan to talk to the police chief about any traffic impacts, also pedestrian safety with regard to Richard's walking tour. We'll look at any parking challenges that we might have associated with various sites. Friday night, we're hoping to have an economic development impact with some of the local restaurants, maybe giving discounts to people who buy tickets for different things. If we have any food, we'll check with Board of Health. We've got the sign approval tonight, hopefully. And is there anything I'm missing? And we'll come back with any approvals that are needed. That's it. Or anything.
Did you say that, is John Thompson going to do the state hospital tour? So then I'm assuming we'll probably have one of our barbecue guys up there. That would fall in line with.
Oh, we didn't even think about that, but
Yeah.
that's a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I'll put that on the list. Yeah.
Sounds like a very exciting time. Thank you guys for organizing it.
The scavenger hunt the library's putting, I assume, is on the library grounds. So there's
Exactly.
no-
It'll be inside in the building. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I can't think of anything.
I'm sure around town you're going to want to have the recycling bins, things that we did for Medfield Day if people are going to be walking around.
Generally,
so.
we treat the whole thing as one event and issue a permit with conditions like you do for Medfield Day.
Okay. Oh, good.
Although it sounds, I mean, if John's doing stuff up at the hospital, it's a dispersed event.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, their things are going to be overlapping, so,
Just have to list it all in one place.
exactly, yeah.
So the only question would be, well, I see the trolley, the parking at Hinckley makes sense if it's, some people are going to Lowell Mason House, some people are going to Dwight Derby House, some people are going to the Peak House. I can see how there could be parking issues.
Exactly, yeah, that's something we'll investigate, yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Any further discussion of any of the consent agenda items?
I would move the consent agenda.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All consent agenda items are approved. Let's see, meeting minutes, November 15th. Are we ready to approve those?
I am good. I sent my edits to Brittany. There was, I don't know which one of you guys put comments about the utility pole and all of that. What ended up happening was in that dialogue, somebody had put a question in the box, so we had moved on to the next segment, and then you were like, oh, wait a minute, there's a question about, does the town hold the pond? So that's why.
I put the question,
Yeah.
I'm the anonymous guy. I don't know why I'm anonymous now, but I'm the anonymous one.
So it actually was in there, it's just the way it played out, it technically came on later in the meeting, but it was a response to a question from the segment that they put it in.
So then my comment, because I didn't even know how to change it, was that it kind of is flowing one way, then it goes to something totally different. So there should be some sort of rewording on that.
So I put a comment that there was a Zoom question. So you caught, sometimes you catch the
Okay,
Zoom question
yeah.
after it's actually asked and
Okay,
we
yeah.
moved on. That's exactly what happened. It's at the end, and so the woman that did the minutes kind of took the question, even though it was technically later in the meeting, and put it at the end of that segment. So that it was about the EV vehicles, and then we moved on, and then you were like, ooh, there's a question here from, I forget the gentleman's name, about the telephone poles, the utility companies. We did not take ownership of them, but we do maintain the lights.
Right,
Yeah.
so in that, so what I'm saying is, in that section, there needs to be, it could just be something that in a subsequent Zoom question.
Well, that's what I wrote.
So you did?
Yeah,
You did.
that's why I
Okay, as long
caught
as
that.
you did, that's fine. And then I had a bunch of editorial, but they were all wordsmithing. The only substantive thing I had was that one vote was misreported, so I corrected. I made one.
Oh, yes, okay, I
so
saw that.
One vote had to be corrected. So if we assume all of those things can be done, then we can approve it pending those minor revisions and the perhaps semi-major one that you did that fixed the problem.
Well, that's how I spend my afternoon, watching 3.5 hours worth of Zoom again. That's why I knew it was, we talked about it on November 15th.
I know, it's good that you do that.
Otherwise, I couldn't comment.
Are we good at moving to approve those?
Absolutely, so moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? No one's opposed. Minutes are approved with, as revised. Town administrator update.
So I have just one update this evening, and I know the board is aware, but for everybody else in town, unfortunately, I have some sad news, and that Sarah Raposa is leaving us to go to the town of Mansfield. For those of you who don't know, Sarah just celebrated her 10th anniversary in December, prior to our new recognition program. But Sarah celebrated her 10th anniversary and is the very first town planner for the town of Medfield. So she's done such a tremendous job for us over the last 10 years, and we're gonna miss her greatly, and Leo, of course. But we wish her a tremendous amount of success. She'll be the new planning and zoning director for the town of Mansfield. So
That's all.
Yeah.
I saw her, I congratulated her. Definitely a bummer, like a loss for
I know.
Medfield, but gotta congratulate her. It's,
yeah, it's just a great opportunity for her, and hopefully Mansfield knows what they're getting and they treat her well. So next Friday.
Bummer.
Okay. Next meeting dates, March 7th and March 20th, and that's a warrant hearing. Sorry,
So
I always
just
do
a
that.
just a quick update. I believe we met with Steve and Bob from the warrant committee today. I think we're actually going to look to move the warrant hearing to March 28th. There is a Trinity hearing that's scheduled for March 20th. So I don't want to compete with
yeah.
that, and a lot of us would like to be at that Trinity hearing. So I think we're just going to slide the warrant hearing to the 28th.
Okay. And then our next, our second meeting of the month of March will be March 21st, and the annual town election is on March 27th. Selectmen reports. Eileen.
Alrighty. All right, so after our last meeting, I followed up with that following Thursday with the Dog Control Bylaw Committee kickoff, which is a great meeting. Super nice people on that committee. We've got people that walk dogs professionally, people that have had dogs, people that have dogs. We have an abutter to State Hospital. And there's one woman that's a vet, and as she said, I'm here to represent the dogs, which I thought was fantastic. So yeah, really good meeting. I know I've engaged with Brittany to help Jill, with some, taking on the responsibility for being a chairperson. And next Monday, when we have the open meeting law workshop or training, will we be addressing questions of somebody coming on as a new chair, like how, to help coach them with open meeting laws and what can and cannot be shared to the
Yeah,
group
that's,
and all
that's what
that?
the whole session will be about.
Okay. then
Yeah,
we just
it's
wanna
gonna
make
be
sure-
for anybody,
Okay,
who wants to brush up on their open meeting law.
Okay, and then, would it be appropriate or inappropriate for someone that, like, I'm thinking of the election coming up. We've got the two school committee people that, if they're coming on, and to be able to sit through that, has anyone reached out to them to see if they might be interested?
I don't know.
Okay,
I would leave that up to whatever board they're
Okay.
seeking employment with.
okay. And then I sat through today the MMA's community engagement, and I will just take away the one thing that the community engagement training focused on was trust is just fundament of everything. Like, if we're gonna be an elected official and you're going to be engaging with the community, trust it starts and stops right there. And it was repeated over and over, but I mean, that to me is essential. And I think we represent it very well up here, that anyone who is dealing with us knows that we are respecting open meeting laws, we are respecting the voices of the citizens, so I thought that was worthwhile. And then, I met with Jean Minio a week ago Friday, to talk with her about some of the conversations that have been going on with the CAM needs for parking up at the state hospital, because I had a chance to talk with Trinity, I've had a chance to talk with her, so I thought it was just getting from all sides. And then, I want to make a comment, and maybe all the reports can be given and we can talk about, but I did happen to catch the conversation, what's going on with the school building committee and some transition with people moving on from their elected positions. And then, you know, and I'll just say a quick little snippet. What concerns me most is, as being as the newest selectman on this board, soon my one-year anniversary is about to come up, is that, you know, when I came on, the one thing I did, knowing that I wasn't running against anybody, is I took that first month. Like, you met with me before I got elected, Pete met with me before I got elected, met with Mike a few times. I had that downtime to bring myself up to speed, so I knew what I was getting into. I was warned about a few things that I would be educated on after I got sworn in. But I found like that was a great transition, that I was able to bring myself up to speed. And, you know, listening to the dialogue, you have two new people coming on that, you know, I think, I'm going to say this, and I don't want to go the wrong way, but like, I don't want to insult them that they're not capable of bringing on all the responsibilities that coming on as a new school committee member would have, in addition to what boards people may get assigned to once they pick up the responsibility. So I just was a little turned off, I'll be honest, with the conversation that new people coming on are being pushed off. And Mark, actually, your name came up about like your comments about the bylaw committee for the school building committee, that if Jess is moving on, and, she's not running again, so effective the election at the end of March, she's no longer an elected official. You're gonna have two new school committee people coming on, and I'm having this conversation, because this could play out with, you know, with people we may have assigned, and then if they have to move on, we'd then be responsible for putting somebody new on, right? Especially if they're moving off. Right, that would be our, right?
Yes, yeah.
So the issue is no different than you have on the planning board or any other board. You have a vacancy.
Mhm.
And there's a procedure for filling the vacancy. And the issue is one of timing. And I simply, I didn't get involved in that. I simply cited the general principle of law that in the absence of something specific, neither a statute, the charter, or bylaws, that a person holding an office that expires or that they terminate continues to sit in that office until a successor is appointed. The underlying rationale for that is so that you're not disrupting governmental function.
And so I guess with that being said, and I actually talked to somebody who's on the committee 30 minutes before I came here tonight, and the person clearly said, we've had one meeting, we got to meet one another. That's all we've done. So it's not like it's 2 years into an in-depth committee. So to bring somebody on now would be ideal, right? And actually, it would make sense to have them actually just sitting in, like you guys saw me last year out somewhere between Bill and Chris, because I knew that I was gonna be coming in, so I brought myself up to speed as best I could before I sat in this chair. So the same thing certainly can be going on over the next 30 days, and then it actually is nice, because then it's a very smooth transition for the members of the school building committee. They have new people, right, they've only missed one meeting in theory, and they're off.
So Eileen, I'm gonna jump in here, and then, not to cut you out here, Pete. I'm gonna make 2 observations. Number 1, we do not know who the 2 new school committee members are. And I would point to last year's election to
And totally fair.
demonstrate how we do not know. Number 2, the discussion we're having here concerns the decisions another appointing authority in this town is making on this committee. I can guarantee you that if we were looking at appointments that we were, by bylaw, responsible for making, the last thing I would want is other appointing authorities in town second-guessing how we're choosing to go about doing this. And I think it's important to recognize that as by design in the bylaw, there are 3 separate appointing authorities. It's not a melded appointing authority that somehow or another has a brain. But so I'm only cautioning, our conversations here could be interesting, but I think they're basically not appropriate in the sense that we're actually trying to get to an answer here, because this is a decision a different appointing authorities make.
So the only reason I'm bringing it up is, as an elected official representing the citizens of this town, and I hear a conversation that reflects on me as an elected official, I'm just having a conversations that if people are watching this, they've followed on Zoom, that bring to their attention something that's going on, that they should be, that these are the things that then draw changes on the floor at a town meeting, because people saying, time out, if something's not clear, do we need to make it clear? And I don't know if we need to make this has to get as messy as it's starting to play out. So I'm just bringing it up for information. I was caught off guard when I heard the conversation. I know when we sat here and we appointed people on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, we knew we had a planning board person we had to pick. We knew we had to have the current planning and building group, and then we had 2 citizens at large, right? We knew that was our responsibility. I know what their responsibility is. I know what Scott's responsibility is. And it didn't sit well with me, and I'm just putting that out there, because we were part of developing that committee, and it's one meeting new, and it's starting to get turned up, and I don't think
Could I just comment as a citizen who also volunteered to be on that committee and was not selected? There is such contention around who is and is not on that committee that if there is going to be a non-elected official who we believe that should be a school committee person, the public should be aware of that, and probably in advance of the town meeting, so it doesn't become a hot topic that someone raises at town meeting. I mean, I know I would want to know, so thank you for raising that, because the assumption is that that's an active school committee member that's also on the SBC, just for that relationship with the ongoing school committee.
So my point is, interesting observation, but the issue that we're dealing with here is an action by a different appointing authority. And I would point out, Chris, you and I had an exchange over the weekend, and one point that Chris made, this is actually for me, because it's somebody else's decision, this has been sort of if you like public policy as much as I do, this has been a fun conversation because of some of the nuances that came out of it. Chris happened to have made an interesting point, which is it is not the decision of the existing school committee to even decide what to do. This will be a decision of the newly formed school committee after the March 27th election that will be faced with this decision. So everything that's been, all of the conversations that have been going on right now are actually interesting, but not relevant to, well, maybe they're relevant, but they're not determinative of what the newly formed school committee after March 27th will decide to do. Outside of that, I just am very sensitive that as one of the 3 appointing authorities for that building committee, I don't think we as an appointing authority have any role weighing in on the decision-making that another
No,
planning
but
authority should make.
informing the public of these decisions. I
all
mean,
trying
I,
to
as
do.
a citizen, don't really delineate who's making what decisions. I expect that you'll all work together to make sure that the SBC is what we
Like,
set
I
out.
think we all share a desire to do the best we can to put a building committee together that will be successful in its efforts.
Agree.
That I think you can count on, but we don't work together on the decisions that we make. Although we shared the decisions. I don't mean like we all worked in a vacuum either. There were decisions that Scott made that, from my standpoint, made it easier for me to make some of the decisions we were gonna make because he had already covered some of the concerns I had with his appointments. So it's not like anything, all the cards are face up on the table, but I think it's important, given the way the bylaw is structured, to respect the various authorities of each of the appointing authorities, because we have different focuses and approaches.
Oh, yeah, and I was just giving it from the newest elected individual, kind of what I went through last year, and I think you bring a very valid point. Last year, there was a write-in last minute, totally respect that, but in the meantime, while they're out there and they want to continue to get their name out there and win their election, getting out there and sitting in these meetings is,
But for sure that,
worked out okay here.
that's for sure.
All right,
Okay.
so I will pass the
Okay.
mic over
Pete?
to Pete.
I had 3 Medfield Foundation meetings since we last met as a select board. And I also had a meeting with Jean Minio about her project and the parking up at the state hospital. And the most interesting thing that I did was to come to a wedding that Frank was putting on here in this room last week. I just happened to be coming back from Brothers Market where I had gotten my bread, and I stopped by to pick up my mail, and there was a wedding going on in this room.
Seriously.
We do them all the time.
What's that?
Marion does them all the time.
Really?
Yeah, we like to do them outside, but the weather was not cooperating, so yes.
She looked spectacular.
Yeah,
and he
so
just
Frank was a
beaming
wedding
at
guest.
me, and that was before the wedding, so
Yes.
nice event. Nice to see the.
Georgia usually takes the pictures. We have a whole routine. Yeah,
You got Plan B, huh?
it's one of the really fun things we get to do.
That's it.
Okay, and just as a side comment, Chris, to your comments about the historic weekend, we've been contacted, we have no action yet, I guess, but we've been contacted from the state, I believe it was, Christine, right? That basically, we have the 250th, it's not a centennial, it's the 250th
250th.
anniversary of the founding of the country coming up in 2026. And basically, they've already been reached out to see if our town is interested in sort of joining in on preparing for the festivities. And I have no doubt but that we will want to do that. So when you first started talking about the historic weekend coming up, it was like, I wonder if she's going to talk anything about 2026. But maybe this
Richard's
concept
working
will
on it.
evolve into something for sure. We got a three-year heads up on this, and I would think that we would be very interested in doing something special in 2026. So, and then the other thing, like the two of you, I also met with Jean. I also met with Michelle Kirkby, which is probably where the genesis of this whole thing we just talked about came from. So I have some sense of at least what Michelle's thoughts were on why she was even thinking about it. And I can attest from the conversation I had with her that the intentions were more in terms of trying to think about the best way to manage a transition. It was not, that was what it was, which is partly why I'm mindful of not wanting to opine on another appointing authority's exercise of the discretion that they see fit. Because I wouldn't want them commenting on what we might choose to do if we ever needed to make a decision that required transition or something else. We just use our best judgment. I'm convinced she was intending to use her best judgment to ensure that that was a building committee that would operate smoothly and with people who could be capable. That's what I heard. I also was impressed with some of Jean's thoughts. Jean, unsurprisingly, has a bigger long-term vision than what the short-term vision of getting the chapel and the infirmary up and running. And I was intrigued. I've learned never to write off any of Gene's ideas, even if they seem bigger or more expansive, more aggressive than we know for sure we can get to. So I thought her ideas were great. They're farther downstream. We have a first phase of this thing to get through first, but I thought it was a great conversation. And I'm confident, as far as the parking goes, that between Trinity's good faith efforts and the town's efforts, that we'll get to some solution that everybody's okay with there, including the people who want to go up to the state hospital and park to do things. So we're mindful of all that. Outside of that, it was a quiet couple of weeks since our last meeting. I don't have anything else to report. Yes?
Just, I had a question related to the state hospital, and the planning with Trinity is, to get into the ground, you're talking some time. So I've been walking around the property quite a bit these days, and just noticing my concern for the disrepair. The buildings continue to sort of decay, and we try to keep up with it. Is Trinity thinking about that and thinking, okay, they're going to try to mitigate things? They're trying to renovate the buildings, but if they don't get into the ground for a year or more, they're going to continue to decay. Water gets in, all this damage. So is Medfield on the hook for this? And I know Bill could, so, and I guess what are we doing about it just to make sure that those buildings are maintained? We just can't say, oh, Trinity's here, great, they'll take care of it. If things start to collapse and get crazy, if you look at the roofs and the water, so that's my question.
So in broad terms, and Bill, you can weigh in on this because you're more in a lot of the details than I am, but in broad terms, Trinity is using this year to do the work that they need to do around planning, to define what the project will be, and to get the permits that will be required to be able to move ahead with the project. Once they know that they have a plan, they've done all the due diligence, that they really know what they're dealing with, and they know that they can get the permits to be able to move ahead with the project, it's at that point that they will then be prepared to actually buy the property from us. So to answer your question, right now, it's our property. We know that Trinity wants to buy it in about a year. Our strategy has been, Christine, you can, if you want to refine my answer here, you can. Our strategy has been to maintain those buildings in a state of current state that doesn't allow the deterioration to jeopardize the ability for Trinity to come in and remediate the buildings and repurpose them for what they propose to do, which is to come up and put rental units in there. There's a lot that's got to be cleaned up, so there's no good reason for us to put extraordinary amounts of money into keeping it in a bad state of, wear, but better than would otherwise be the case. But certainly things like water damage, issues on the roofs, and things like that, I think is where, mostly roofs, I think is that, and making sure windows that need to be boarded up are boarded up because people throw rocks to the ones that aren't. But also making sure that the circulation, there is air circulation that's required, so to keep a building up for another year without really getting worse, I should say, there's a couple of considerations there. We're trying to do that as cheaply as we can.
Well, and Trinity's been through those buildings. They've done their assessments. They know what the condition is, and they have been fine throughout the LDA of us not going in to put any additional money in. We don't have the funding to be able to do that. We have very little money to do any fixes up there. And honestly, we've spent the majority of our money trying to keep people out of those buildings. And we continue to try and keep people out, so.
I was just going to emphasize that.
Yeah.
The majority of the effort's up there. Number one, most of it's volunteer. A lot of the effort is volunteer effort up there. Building and grounds committee people, but keeping the windows boarded up when they notice that somebody's gone in, trying to keep the growth around the buildings cleared so somebody isn't sneaking in a basement window or something like that.
Yeah, and we've been trying to alleviate, there's been lots of social media posts inviting people up to the site and, explaining to them how to get in, so we try and mitigate that as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And
So.
the major issue, again, there's been some roof repairs.
Minor.
There's been some, minor. Well, if you think about the square foot of roof that you have up there and everything else, and the age and everything else, it would be a significant task. It's going to be a major problem, I think, not a problem, but it's going to be a major chore for Trinity when they get there. But the biggest issues have been, over the years, people stealing the downspouts, so the water comes off the roof and goes right down into the foundations, everything
The
else. So there's-
copper downspouts.
Yeah, so there's water in some of the buildings, everything else, and the town didn't have, I don't think ever had enough money or ever could have had enough money to go back and fix all of that all at the same time. When we were up there, we had I took Charles River and their new people through the C&D area, and we walked the campus and everything else. And there's some noticeable mortar falling out of the bricks in it, but Trinity's going to have to do all that anyway, and there isn't, you're putting Band-Aids on stuff now that are going to be taken off, and there's going to be major surgical procedures done, so.
I actually had a conversation with John Thompson when I was jogging up at the hospital last weekend and bumped into him. And I had mentioned to him that the downspouts had been stolen, and he told me they hadn't been, that DCAM had actually taken them down, or DMH, that they, so that didn't happen. The other thing that John mentioned was that he has access apparently out at, I think it's out at, stored, he said, at Westboro State Hospital maybe, or that's the one that got sold too. So somewhere they're storing a good-sized room full of Medfield State Hospital memorabilia, paintings and things, and those have been offered to the town of Medfield, and he and I talked about how maybe we could set up a room somewhere that would be like a museum of Medfield State Hospital stuff.
Gene should be grabbing a few of those.
Yeah, Gene and I talked about that way back when we were looking at the old water pumps and everything else. They're still there, by the way. If you haven't seen them from the pump house, but yeah, they're still there. They should be in building 10.
You can't go in.
Vicious dogs up there to take care of.
Just two brief comments around the funding. When we first bought the property, I think every year the taxpayers were contributing $150,000 to $175,000 to maintenance and security of the property. As I think most of us know, over the years, the property has been used on a number of occasions as movie sets. And mostly it's movie sets. I guess there may have been a couple of other rentals of small things. But as a result of that, for the past, 4 or 5 years, we haven't really used tax money. We've been able to generate that $150,000 a year through the ongoing rental revenue we've been able to get for it. So we've largely moved the overhead cost of that property while it's been sitting there has been moved off the taxpayers' shoulders for a number of years now. Second point is, we kind of casually mentioned volunteers. Just about anybody I think that you see working up there is a volunteer. Anybody, some of you have probably seen the Facebook comment about the dog, cleaning up with the dogs, but it's not just that. It's the people you see driving around, John Thompson and involved. There are some people that I guess I'll call it a labor of love, but I'll say it was a real windfall for the town that people step forward. This is not like, I put 2 hours in a month. This is, I'm there on a routine basis, and if you really step back and look at it, you realize what a huge contribution they have collectively made to the town. Because if we may have covered the maintenance and security expenses that we had, but if we had to basically pay somebody to do all the stuff that we've had people doing up there, we would have been spending a lot more money than we really have. So that's a plea, if you have a dog, not to make it worse for them, to try to keep it clean. But also to recognize that if somebody just walked in, they would probably assume we have a paid staff that's working there, because they're always there. That's no small thing. All right, I think we're done. Let's see, with that, do we need the actions taken on bills? Because we had 2 signatures that were done this past week, so I don't think we have to use our new procedure.
Good.
Let me skip that.
Signed it.
In which case, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn unless anybody has anything else they want to bring up. We're okay. Billy.
26, is that also 375th birthday for Medfield? 2026?
You at 1649 and
1649, 1651,
Yeah.
because it's not clear.
Yeah,
which-
so not quite. It's a five, it ends in a 5, because I was doing the 51, it's like, what's a 5? But it's now
Well, no, 26 would be right, 375.
375th. Well, I don't know if we want to go into competition with the country, but we can entertain that. We have to.
Do something.
Medfield Day that year better be pretty good, that's all I can say.
country to York.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, we were here first, yeah.
I mean,
All right.
350th was a pretty big deal in town, so I
Yep.
think it makes sense to.
We
think
have
about
3
it.
years to figure this out, so. All right, motion to adjourn?
Okay.
Second,
All those in favor? Aye, opposed? We are closed.
we are done for the evening.
Good night.